are just trusting their own individual morals in this vacuum where they've lost perspective of what is okay to do to individuals in terms of surveillance. So it's just a dangerous situation, and we've reached this tipping point. And I think, yeah, the individual just needs to step up and start learning about this tech, so it doesn't, so that our ignorance isn't used against us, so that we can get educated, be making smarter choices.
It's just like being aware of what the Federal Reserve does and the central banks and the debt and all that, and like being aware of it and being able to take steps to prepare yourself or, you know, to protect yourself. So really important things to learn about. So hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Crypto Tips. Today is a very special day. I have with me Naomi Brockwell of NBTV, Naomi Brockwell TV. Hi, Naomi. Thank you for joining.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad we could organize this interview. I know it's been hard for me. Traveling in general is like hard to do interviews, but so anyway.
You are a constant traveler. I'm always looking from afar, a little bit jealous of all of the wonderful adventures you're having.
Well, the mystery is, that's a trick. I gotta let everyone think you're super interesting. So today, just let's give, I guess, a little introduction for you, for those who might not know, you're missing out. Also, for those of you who think there's no girls in crypto, here you go. Here's another one you should know, Naomi. Can you tell a little bit about your philosophy, what you do in this space, and yeah, a little bit about you for them?
Sure. So I got into crypto. I started making videos about it like 2013. Before that, I was really interested in economics. And so that's what got me over to the crypto side of things, very much interested in competing currencies, taking back control of the money supply. All that stuff is super important. And I just think that Bitcoin just changed everything. You know, it was the biggest step towards freedom we've had in the last 100 years, because taking back control of the money supply is just so important. So I started doing that, but I'm a television producer by profession. So I produce for Stossel, have produced for some major networks before, and do films and that sort of thing. But my passion and my focus at the moment is cryptocurrency, and privacy is a big one. I used to think, before, I was like, well, crypto is the panacea. It will solve everything, because once you take back control of the money supply, you know, governments can't raise funds for wars and all these bad things that I disagree with. But I also realized that, you know, there's a lot more to it than that. You need privacy in your life, because once people, like, even if the government can't take your money, can't seize it because they don't have the private keys, they can still throw you in jail if they know what you're spending it on and they don't like it. So I just think that privacy is such an important thing to have, and Snowden's really done such an amazing job of educating us about what's going on and the overreach of government and the surveillance state that we've just let creep up. So that's been a bit terrifying. I've kind of gone down like a rabbit hole with all of that, and learning about these things, and just trying to give people tips on how to piece by piece get more privacy back into their life. And it's a giant undertaking. Like, it is no small feat, but if we can make little proactive choices in different areas, it does make a difference. So yeah, that's sort of me. And then I MC a lot of conferences as well. So yeah,
cool. Yeah, the privacy thing, it's super interesting, and it's an excellent point. You know, having your own control over, you know, the kind of financial freedom and autonomy that cryptocurrency can have is good. But you're right, it's only one piece of the puzzle, and it's, you know, giving you an option to opt out of the governmentally issued fiat. And at the same time, privacy is a huge issue that a lot of people love to limit or to label as, you know, oh, only criminals need that. But the point is that you should have a choice. If you want to, you know, unleash all of your data for the governments to sift through and lose or sell to the highest bidder, that's great. That's your choice, but you should have a choice. And so I think that's actually one thing I want to have you talk about today. First, maybe I should keep this, you know, for the hook to have people watch till the very end, but I think this is very important information. And yeah, so everyone, you did a recent video talking about the importance of VPNs, what they do, you know, how to spot a good VPN, what to look for, what to avoid, and kind of best practices with that.
Yeah, so I mean, there are, as I said, lots of little things you need to be aware of. And with that, what you said before about if you've got nothing to hide, it shouldn't be an issue. I mean, it's so naive.
What a terrible frame of mind, yeah.
Yeah, people don't realize, first of all, they don't realize they're committing on average 7 felonies a day, because that's just how the law works. We make a lot of them and we generally don't take a lot of them back. So these just accumulate over time. There's not a single person in the world that knows what every law is, because it's not possible for a single person to know this. It would take lifetimes to even read through them all, let alone, you know, absorb the knowledge to understand what all of this is. So we're all committing felonies. The thing is that if you start doing things that governments don't like, you know, we fought a revolution. I say we, I'm not even American, but yeah, I think it was an important fight to have over the idea that the government can't just collect all information about people and stockpile it, so that if one day you get on their bad side, they continue on anything, because they have this permanent record of everything you've ever done. I mean, it's just an atrocious way to run a society. We need to start rethinking this mindset that we can let the government look at everything we're doing, because that's an Orwellian nightmare. That's literally what Orwell describes in 1984, when you have these monitors that are looking at you at all time. You know, we're looking into a camera right now that we know full well the NSA has full access of, and if there's any sort of malware in your computer, they are capturing all of this data. We can go into explain how stellar wind works, how you know, the turbine and turmoil and turbulence and all these programs that the NSA set up work. But literally, I mean, there's nothing we do online at the moment that is private, and we need to be taking proactive measures to change that, and we need to take that into our own hands. Regarding VPNs, that's a tricky area, because VPNs and their efficacy depend on who you're hiding from. So in my video, I was very careful to say that, you know, VPNs are great for encrypting your data. If you are doing things online, like for example, you've got huge amounts of identity theft going on the internet, and people are using Wi-Fi that is unsafe, and they're just transmitting passwords across the internet. All of that is bad for your physical privacy if you're fighting against hackers. And there's a lot of hacking out there, and people, again, are naive if they think, well, I'm not important, no one would come find me, because there are literally, you know, spider bots that go and find any open port, and just, it's automated. They don't need to target you. It's an automated process where people can find vulnerabilities in your system. So you should be looking after your privacy, because it can destroy your life to have things like that go wrong, you know, have certain accounts hacked or identity theft and all that. So VPNs are great, for example, like encrypting all of your traffic, so that if you're using a bank account online, you know, you're just adding that extra layer of privacy. There are things to keep in mind, and there was this great analogy on Twitter that says, like, VPNs are kind of like the ring in Lord of the Rings, you know, this Eye of Sauron. Like if you yeah, it's like it allows you to be invisible from everyone else, like all the hackers in the world, but as soon as you put it on, suddenly you are very visible to the higher authorities. So you have to be aware that VPNs are not an anonymity tool. They are very much tied to your identity, and they are not a tool for escaping from government. So if you're doing things like accessing, you know, different websites that are illegal, just be mindful of the risk that you're taking, and that VPNs are not helping you. So VPNs, again, it is amazing what information came out in the Snowden revelations, because we think, oh, if we encrypt our traffic, it's all safe, right? And there are multiple things you have to keep in mind. One of them is the type of encryption that's used. And it's very clear that the NSA has cracked almost every type of encryption that we use on the internet. There are very few specs that it seems they have not yet cracked. And a great resource, if you're trying to find a VPN, is go to Freedom of Press, which is the foundation that Snowden is the chairman of. And they go through and say, like, basically, if they don't have this type of encryption for the handshake, if they don't have this type of encryption for this other part, they go through and list all the specs. If they don't have it, they have to have a really good reason, because they're the best encryption tools. So they actually give 5 recommendations of companies, and they're companies that seem to fit the criteria of having the right specs, but also having no logging policy. So another thing you have to keep in mind is if companies are keeping your data, for example, like, I don't know if your viewers understand how VPNs work, but basically it's like this private network that's created within a public network. So if you're using something like a public infrastructure like the internet, it's like a private channel that can be set up within that, so that people can communicate, and it's end-to-end encrypted, so no one can access that, even though you're using the wider infrastructure of the internet. Now, with with logging policies, basically, if you're feeding your traffic through a VPN server and then it's going out into the world, it helps you like to hide your IP address. It helps that sort of thing because the website you're visiting only gets access to the VPN's server and their address, not yours. But if the VPN provider is keeping all that information and logging it and saying they accessed this and it was from this IP address, they went to this website. If they're keeping all of that, that can also be a treasure trove for hackers. That can be, you know, and we just found NordVPN the other day. That was not one of the ones that Snowden recommended, by the way, but NordVPN was hacked. It was this big thing. They apparently only recently found out about it and it happened years ago.
Oh,
so
wow.
That's like, yeah. So, you know, you have to keep in mind, like if people are storing your information, that's a risk for you as well. Now, keep in mind also that this is another thing, like I have to keep reiterating that VPNs are not a tool for hiding from government. They're not an anonymity tool. And there are lots of people who have legitimate reasons to hide the government. If you are a journalist, if you are a whistleblower, if you are someone who has set up a foundation that they disagree with, or in an industry that they disagree with, even though it may be legal in your state, like medical marijuana, you know, all of these people have a good reason to want to hide their traffic. But VPNs are not helpful for that because whatever VPN server you're using and all your data is going into that, whether they log it or not, they still know who you are. They still have that information. And, you know, governments routinely have gag orders where they can say, listen, we know they're using your VPN. We want you to track that. We want you to log it in perpetuity forever for us and give us all the data, you know, and that VPN server would be powerless to say no to that. You know, even in countries where they have strict privacy rules, there are some countries that are better than others for that. You know, Switzerland or Denmark seem to have better, deal with privacy a lot better than places like Russia or China. But even then, you know, the long arm of the law is, it's quite sneaky. And even though countries may try their best to establish certain rights for their individuals, there are lots of ways that it's been proven that governments are just breaking through that regardless. I mean, the IRS was able to break the Swiss banking system, for example, you know, which was considered one of the most robust systems in the world, uncrackable, but, you know, anything is breakable. So just be aware, like VPN's great security tool for the individual to be protecting their data online, especially if you're using public Wi-Fi, which I wouldn't recommend, but if you have to, use a VPN, so at least it adds that extra layer of security there.
Can you touch on a little bit about Wi-Fi? And because what was it? Edward started again, said something about like don't use Wi-Fi. What are your thoughts on that?
So he tweeted out, this was about a month or two ago, he said, don't use Wi-Fi at home. Use an Ethernet cable. And don't even use it on your phone. Plug your phone, your phone, into an Ethernet cable. And I read this and I was like, what? Like this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And so I started researching it because I didn't know anything about this. And he said, listen, there are public maps that are available that track and keep a map of every Wi-Fi access point in existence. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. So yeah, I just started researching this and I went through down this rabbit hole, and they made this video that went viral because it turns out that there are a lot of people who don't know what this means. But basically, when you're using Wi-Fi, you're just transmitting a whole lot of data on radio waves, and that's publicly accessible. And I think a lot of people don't realize how much information is being sent out because we can't see these things. We're not quite clear about what sort of privacy violations or privacy weaknesses we're creating for ourselves. So the thing with Wi-Fi access points and a site like wiggle.net is they've done a great job in kind of highlighting this information. So what wiggle.net is this website. When you go to this website and you see like the map of the world and you can see all these little speckles everywhere and you're like, some pretty speckles, and you zoom in and then you see a lot more of them. You zoom in and then you zoom in and you can zoom in your house and you will see the name, the SSID of every Wi-Fi network. That means like, you know, Naomi's Wi-Fi at home, or, you know, Heidi phone hotspot, or whatever, you know, you're calling your networks. They're all listed there. But it's a lot worse than that. So Wiggle, what they do is it's all community driven, and they create this database to get people's awareness going about what's going on and what information is accumulatable. And and it's a little scary what you can do in their database alone. Like, just for example, in their database, some reasons why this would be a threat is because, for example, if you turn on a hotspot on your phone, that becomes a wireless access point. And so you're transmitting information and people are connecting to you. You can actually see what devices are connected to Wi-Fi spots, or including like your phone or whatever. And every device has like a MAC address or an SSID. And I always get those confused. It's like BSSID, SSID, MAC address. Like it all gets confusing. But and I think I might have just flipped those around. So but basically, you just need to know that your phone has an identifier. It's a name, and that is publicly available information. Now, why might this be bad? Like, first of all, let's just look at hotspots themselves. So let's say you have a hotspot on your phone and you're using your laptop on a train or whatever. You turned on your hotspot. You can actually track on these websites where that hotspot has moved to, what time it was available. You can look in perpetuity. You can also see what devices were connected to it. So let's say your laptop was connected to it. I now can see, okay, well, laptop with that MAC address was connected to this. Let me search for that MAC address. Oh, that MAC address was also connected to these Wi-Fi hotspots there. Oh, she happens every 5 o'clock, to leave that hotspot and go to this one. That's probably her work. That's probably her home address. You start to see what kind of security vulnerabilities are in a system like that if you're just publicly putting out this information. So one thing he says is don't use Wi-Fi at home, because that's just extra information you don't need to be broadcasting, and just plug your phone into an Ethernet cable. Also, Wi-Fi is a lot less secure. There are a lot more ways for hackers to get into your network, and if they can access your internet network, then basically the only thing stopping them from accessing your devices is whatever firewalls and protections you have on all your individual devices. Now, like televisions are probably connected, your Nest thermostat is probably connected. All of these things are things that hackers can then access if they can get onto your network, and you're just relying on the actual hardware's protections to stop them. So there are all kinds of issues with having like this wireless home. You can set up, like if you want that sort of accessibility, there are companies that do that sort of thing but don't connect it to the internet. So that does add a layer of protection. So if you really want all these smart devices, then check those out. But these are issues with Wi-Fi that I think people need to be aware of. And what's more, I'm actually in the middle of doing a video at the moment, which I may film today, may film tomorrow, I'm not sure, is like the Wi-Fi probe requests. So if you have your phone on, like for example, if I go into my Wi-Fi settings on my phone, first of all, it lists all the Wi-Fi spots that are available nearby. Also in your phone, you know how when you go and visit your parents' house, it just automatically connects to the Wi-Fi? Why does it do that? Because your phone stores a list of every Wi-Fi network you've ever connected to. If you're using an iPhone, you can't even access that list. There's no way to actually find a list and delete things from it on an iPhone. On Android, there are different ways to do it. On a computer, there are different ways. But what happens... Yeah,
I'm thinking on my app or on my Mac, I've seen, you can say, forget this network or something like that.
But on your Mac you can, on your computer, but not on your phone. You actually don't even know. And you know how it so seamlessly connects when you go to someone's house you've connected to before? It just automatically happens. Why does that happen? It's because like every few seconds, your phone emits this probe request that says, hey, every single network I've ever connected to,
here I am.
Are any of you available right now? And then if nothing comes back, they'll be like, okay, so there's nothing available right now. That's a unique identifier. That says, like, you're probably the only person in the world that has all of those Wi-Fi addresses that's sending out probe requests at any given time, right? Because you're the only person who's, been to my house and then to your best friend's house and your parents' house and your work, and so it's a unique identifier. Now, how is this exploited? Like, this is a huge security threat as well. But what we know from this is that these things are publicly available. So what other people are collecting this information? We know that Google and Apple have treasure troves of information that they're collecting at all times. You know, when you have those driverless cars driving around, you know, the Waymo cars that are like all over San Francisco, well, they're also sending out, you know, requests for picking up Wi-Fi probes, picking up Wi-Fi networks. They're accessing all this information and they're creating these databases. So wiggle.net is a site that tries to catalog a lot of information, but they don't have nearly as much information. Like if you're terrified by the information you can search for on their site, you should be doubly terrified of what Apple and Google have, because what this means is that a database exists. A database exists that has all this information. And if it exists, it can be exploited. What kind of oversight is being given to these? What's that kind of security measures to protect them? What kind of, you know, leverage do governments who are trying to extradite people have to access this information? They probably have a huge amount of leverage. So what's something you could do? Turn off your Wi-Fi when you're not using it. Don't just keep it probing. Something you should keep in mind with iPhones is when you go in your settings. First of all, if you like pull up from the screen and you just have the control center and you turn it off, that doesn't turn it off. That just says, forget this until tomorrow. Like, don't try to access things until tomorrow. So your Bluetooth and Wi-Fi are going to be on until you go into the settings and turn them off. But, you know, or turn your phone off entirely when you don't need to use it. Or, you know, there are lots of little things you can do, but you should start forgetting networks whenever you join them, you know, and you're actually in range. You should just forget all networks, honestly, and you should keep your Wi-Fi off when you're not using it, because it's you know, we're kind of going down paranoid crazy territory, but it's not paranoid if this stuff is happening, and it's not paranoid if it's being exploited, and it absolutely is. So it's just one more area of your life you can try to safeguard.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen time and again how more like sensitive information has been leaked, and like you said before, that one privacy leak happened years before the VPN that anything was reported. Like you're trusting that someone has the moral aptitude to let you know that they messed up.
Right. And a lot of the time the NSA does know about these exploits. They have entire divisions that they've set up to crack specific VPNs, to crack specific types of encryption. They know about these exploits, and if they know about it, you can bet other people do as well. You know, we know that the NSA is not foolproof, and it's made up of a bunch of individuals. And furthermore, we know that these individuals have very little oversight and accountability, because a lot of the things they're doing are illegal. So what accountability, oversight is there? You know, if they do something bad, the government can't say, well, we're, you know, throwing you in jail, because then they'd have to admit that they were allowing these illegal practices and surveillance to take place in the first place. So you have a bunch of people that you're just trusting their own individual morals in this vacuum where they've lost perspective of what is okay to do to individuals in terms of surveillance. So it's just a dangerous situation, and we've reached this tipping point. And I think, yeah, the individual just needs to step up and start learning about this tech, so it doesn't, so that our ignorance isn't used against us, so that we can get educated, be making smarter choices.
It's just like being aware of what the Federal Reserve does and the central banks and the debt and all that, and like being aware of it and being able to take steps to prepare yourself, or, you know, to protect yourself. Yeah. So really important things to learn about. So slight pivot, talk about vulnerability points and hacking. Crypto conferences, I feel like that's actually been, let's be honest, that's like a big reason why I don't want to go, because like I don't even want to bring my phone or my computer or anything to them, because I mean, come on, like hackers all over the crypto space. Yeah. So like, what are your best practices for attending a crypto conference, for like protecting yourself, for someone who's so aware of the privacy requirements?
Right. We'll never connect to public Wi-Fi ever. Just don't ever do that. Yeah, just be careful. Don't let your device out of your sight, because physical access to devices is terrible. Even if you're in a speaker's room and you're leaving your computer, just like keep that with you, or leave it with someone you trust, because that stuff is dangerous and people do try to exploit it. Generally, they have like security guards around at doors, but I mean, it's pretty easy to act confident and let yourself into areas you're not meant to be in. Like, do you know who I am? And people do that. So just, yeah, best practices at conferences is difficult. But I think, again, like, I mean, I actually have a Faraday bag that I use. I got it from the guys at Bill Fodel, so they have some awesome products, and people should check those out. I'm not giving a commission or anything, just like their stuff. But I often will keep my devices in Faraday bags just to add an extra layer of security there. And especially when you're dealing, like if you have private keys on your computer, and if it's not in cold storage, which it should be, but if you do have like large amounts on your computer or your phone, we'll take them off your computer and your phone. And that'll be my number one suggestion. Don't let people plug things into your computer. Don't let people use your cables. I just be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and often they have those boards as well, like where you can, instead of plugging in to it like a power socket, you just plug into a USB port. And just be really careful about that, because that has access to your data. So I use a thing called a data blocker, which basically if you look inside a USB, you can't really see, but there are a certain number of little metal prongs in there. Now the data blockers only have 2 of those, so they actually take out the data access and just provide electricity. Yeah, but this is also a workaround. If your work computer blocks you from plugging things in, you can still charge your phone at your workstation by using something like a data blocker. So that'll just go in and just connect to the electricity. So I would recommend those if you're ever, and the same with planes. Like don't ever plug your phone into a plane, because the planes could just get all your, you have no idea how much information is being collected. If it can be collected, that it is. So just be aware of that, and I encourage people to use data blockers.
Sweet. That's like some really good insider info. I didn't know that about the USB cords. Nice.
Yeah, this one here, this is actually a little adapter I bought. This is my Ethernet to phone adapter. So I plug in my Ethernet whenever I want to use internet. Like currently I'm hardwired in. I spoke to an electrician about like what it would cost to get my house like wired with like Cat 7 cables. It was astronomical. Don't do that. So I just did it myself. So I just bought some white cat cables, some white cable ties, just put them all around. So now I have hardwire going to the places where I need, and it's actually totally fine, because I'm going to plug my phone in when I'm at home anyway. It's not a huge inconvenience to have like it just sitting in one place. And if it's just going to be sitting in one place, I may as well hardwire it rather than using Wi-Fi. So just little steps, and I haven't found it to be more inconvenient. So
nice, impressive. Good follow through.
Yeah. I figure by giving people tips for this, I have to be walking the walk, not just talking the talk. People are like, you're connected to Wi-Fi. I feel so ashamed. So I'm careful with what I put out in my videos, because I'm like, is this something I'd be willing to do? Because it's kind of a pain in the ass. So I try to make things as easy as possible, and just find the little changes we can be making.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think even any kind of a security implementation is worth it. So,
well, can I just mention one more thing about that?
Yeah.
Alexa and Hey Google. Can we just talk about smart devices and these smart homes? Because think about it. And this is something Snowden goes over in his book as well. We put things like Alexa on our bedside table. What kind of information is that picking up? That's literally recording, listening to everything you say. It's immediately turning it into text, and all of that is getting logged. Now, you have to keep in mind that Amazon has, what was it, like a $10 billion data center? They had this secret project where they got this, they won a bid to build this data center for the NSA. You can bet that everything that is being recorded in Alexa is being stored and logged somewhere. So just be really careful with that. Also, Alexa is taking that data. So if that's on your bedside table, that's also picking up any fetishes and kinks you might have. It knows all of this stuff about you, and all of that data is stored. Be really careful with that stuff. Do you really, for the sake of not walking 2 steps to a light switch, do you really want a device that is listening to everything you say, transferring it into text format, storing the data about that in perpetuity forever, attaching it to your real identity and your permanent record? Yeah. You probably don't. So just have a think about that. We need to be aware that this stuff is happening, so then we can have a realistic conversation about how much of it we think is good for our lives and how much of it is not good. I mean, I'm addicted to tech. I love tech. I'm not a Luddite. I think that there's new things out there. I want to try them. But I think that there are tech products that are bad for us, and there are tech products that are greatly helpful. They help protect our privacy and our security. And maybe we just need to be making more proactive choices about which we decide to let into our lives. Very solid advice. Also, you're paranoid.
No, but it's true. I mean, it's true. It's like at some point you're either like full on, or you're like, it's hard to be willfully ignorant once you know what's happening, you know? It's
exactly.
Like, so
yeah.
At some point it's like, it is what it is, but you just have to protect yourself as best you can, but
yeah,
still participate
sure.
in the world and like, you know, not be a complete hermit living in a cave. So
oh yeah, I'm not ready for that yet. I can't give up my Twitter family just
yeah, so I do want to talk about your music videos because I think those are epic. That might be what some people know you from. That's actually what I'm actually most familiar with you from before we met before, was the love letter to Satoshi. The Bitcoin girl was such a good one. I don't know if that's your original one, but that was a good one. And also you had one song, it was like in Japanese with like all these wigs.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Bitcoin, atarashi okane. It was like Bitcoin, money for the future. They're really dumb and cheesy.
No, but the production value is so good, and I think it's really epic that you know took the time to make something really quality like that. Is there any plans of making like, for example, how long has it been since you've released a music video like that?
Well, I mean, I started doing the Steam at open mic night, so that actually got me back into playing. So I started out in music. I moved to New York as an opera singer, so that was what I was doing for a living. And because of a lot of different things, I ended up taking a job as a film producer, and then because that was also something I was doing, but just as a hobby. But so music was always something that I was like, how do I incorporate this? And when I started making my Bitcoin music videos, it was at a time when no one had heard of Bitcoin. The only people involved were super techie. I was very lucky to be surrounded, like all my best friends were involved and the ones setting up companies. And so I was discovering this, and also from an economics background, I was just like, this is epic. People need to know about this. So for me, it was like, well, how can I capture people's attention for someone who has no idea what this is, and kind of give them little bits of information. And so I just started making music videos because that was my background. And it's like, it's interesting because I've just found less and less time for music, and I miss it so much, if we're being honest. Like I miss it. But now, I just started writing. Like then I had this weekly song challenge where, you know, Dean Logic, he's like just a Twitter friend, and I've never met him in person, but he just started writing me songs and rewriting them as parody lyrics. So I just do them in the Steam open mic nights. I have no plans to make any epic productions because they're very time consuming, and right now I'm super focused on privacy and just educating people about best practices, privacy with your money, privacy with your data. So I don't have plans, but I'm always up for ridiculous shenanigans like that. It's so much fun. It's I've done a bunch of the highly produced ones now, and then just have a bunch of like me on a guitar entering an open mic night, and they're a lot of fun, and they kind of take me away from the like I'm paranoid and wearing a tinfoil hat kind of side.
So is there anything that like you're into the privacy thing, diving in with like Edward Snowden and all that he's about? What are you like looking forward to in the future? What's happening with you now? What do you want people to know?
In the future, I'm looking forward to people, like the conversation about privacy to get more pervasive. You're starting to see this conversation even in Congress, you know, when they had the hearings with about Libra. I was really impressed to start to see some of the politicians. By the way, disclaimer, I was really unimpressed with that whole thing. Those people
you did great coverage on that though, I will say that.
Oh my God. They're talking about this stuff, and it's very clear they have no idea what they're talking about. But I will applaud a handful of them who brought up the privacy issue and said, you know, privacy is important. How could blockchain potentially help people with their data, protect their data? How can we make sure that companies don't abuse data? I wish that they had a little bit more self-awareness, because they're looking at the companies calling kettle black there and say, you companies and you're misusing people's data. Meanwhile, the government is just, what they're doing is just so much more, like astronomically worse than anything. And quite often, they're partners in this, because we've learned that sometimes the government will outright subpoena companies for their data. Sometimes they will surreptitiously just collect the data and the companies don't even know what's going on. So we've started the dialogue about privacy of data and why it's important. It needs to go a lot further. So I'm looking forward to seeing that conversation develop. I'm looking forward to people start to call out the government on this as well, and call out the extent of the surveillance state, because we are in really dangerous territory right now. The Prime Minister of Australia, I live in America, but I'm following what's going on there because it just seems like a deep descent into crazy territory. He says, I'm not even joking, this is not The Onion, all right? He says we need facial recognition technology for anyone watching porn in Australia. And he wants to do this to protect people.
They want to know how happy you are.
Yeah. So what is he into? Because the Alexa didn't give us enough information about his kinks.
Yeah, exactly.
But they literally
voyeurism.
it's saying, and they're saying is to make sure that the people watching it are over 18. So I have all kinds of issues, and quite a lot of them are obvious with this. Like, do you really want someone watching you on camera while you're masturbating? Probably not. So little things like that, where the governments are coming out with these ideas and there's very little pushback, is terrifying to me. There should be uproar. They should be booted out. They should be sent a message that we as people deserve better, and we demand better from the people who are meant to represent us, because that is not helping anyone. And collecting that data, I mean, it's mind-boggling to think of how that can be exploited, and just how gross it is in general. We need to be pushing back as individuals, and that's what I'm most excited about. I'm excited about people getting more cognizant of this stuff, making smarter decisions in their life, taking more individual responsibility, because the government is actually abusing this power, not helping us. So we need to be more proactive in our own lives. So maybe I'm hopelessly optimistic and excited for no good reason, but that's what I want to see happen. And I am starting to see the tides turn there.
Well, hopefully this video will help with that effort. Yeah, that's about all that I had. I hope that you guys viewing this amazing interview have learned a lot. Take some notes, watch it again, take some notes, and learn what you can do to change your life to be more private and be more aware of your practices and how you're probably not up to snuff, because I have learned some things as well today. So thank you, Naomi.
And I'm constantly learning. So I'll keep you all posted as I learn things. I'll be like, guys, did you know? And I will let you know. Yeah,
for sure. So people can find you on YouTube, Naomi Brockwell. Also,
Naomi Brockwell TV on there.
TV, okay. Yeah. And on Twitter, do you want to go ahead and plug all your?
Yeah, so I'm on most of the social media platforms out there. I try to be on all of the decentralized ones and alternative media platforms. So yes, I'm on YouTube, Naomi Brockwell TV. I'm on BitChute. I'm on library.io, or .com now actually. I'm on minds.com. I'm on memo.cash. I'm on Steemit. I'm on all of these. On Twitter, I am Naomi Brockwell, and you can actually find a list of where to find me on those. But yeah, generally I'm just Naomi Brockwell on all these platforms.
Nice. You did a little bit better branding yourself with your own name. I have like 3 different names for all these platforms.
Yeah. Well, I have this one, like Steemit is Sky Corridors, and I can't change it. And actually my Instagram is Sky Corridors as well. So it's like, I just really liked Sky Corridors. You know how when like shafts of light break through the clouds, it looks like corridors in the sky. I just love that image. So so some of my stuff is badly branded too.
Oh, yeah. Okay. It's all good.
Yeah, we'll deal with it.
So thanks again for your time today. I really enjoyed this talk, and I think it was very valuable for everyone. So share it far and wide, hit your comments down below. Love to hear you guys' thoughts. So yeah, that's it for today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Thanks so much.